Welcome to today's Explainer. We're tackling a really massive question from our source material today. Why is it that so many brilliant, highly capable leaders just crash and burn when the pressure hits? I mean, the failure rate of traditional leadership models is absolutely staggering, and it's usually because they focus entirely on outer performance. They give you the strategy, the execution tactics, all the tools, but they completely ignore the structural foundation holding the whole thing up. And what happens? When real pressure hits, the facade just crumbles. But today, we're looking at a fascinating solution. We're going to map out the psychotech inner architecture, which is a system that fundamentally changes how you process stress, take action, and honestly experience reality itself.
Okay, let's dive into this structural blueprint. Today's explainer covers 5 key parts. 1. The spinal cord. 2. The ignition switch. 3. The SPARK architecture. 4. The integration loop. And finally, 5. The honest prescription.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the spinal cord, where inner architecture meets outer performance. So, true leadership, the kind that actually survives real adversity, requires connecting your internal mechanics directly to your external results. You really cannot compartmentalize your mind from your output, because they're literally the exact same biological system. Now, most systems out there treat these concepts as entirely separate chapters in a book, but the psychotech model treats them as anatomy. Notice how these 5 neurological layers, thoughts, beliefs, emotional intelligence, actions, and resilience, stack together exactly like vertebrae forming a spine, right? Your thoughts structure your beliefs, which regulate your emotional intelligence, which then dictates your actions, which ultimately determines your resilience. It's a precise biological cascade. And if you remove just one of those vertebrae, what happens? The entire system collapses, and you're paralyzed as a leader. Moving right along to Section 2, the ignition switch, activating the system.
All right, so we've built this incredibly robust 5-layer spinal cord. But a spine doesn't really move without an electrical current, does it? We need to activate the system. And here is the master variable, self-awareness. This is absolutely the apex trait. It's the ignition switch for that entire anatomical structure we just talked about. Think about some of the most famous psychological frameworks in the world. You've got Carol Dweck's growth mindset, Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence, or even the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Every single one of them begins and ends right here. Self-awareness is the master variable that actually turns a good idea into a lived reality.
It is absolutely crucial to absorb this next point because, honestly, this is exactly where most leaders fail. Without genuine self-awareness, having a growth mindset is only an intellectual exercise. You know all the right buzzwords, sure, but you don't embody them. Without self-awareness, emotional intelligence just stays entirely theoretical. Your deliberate practice lacks any real direction because you don't actually know what your blind spots are. And your resilience, well, it has absolutely no anchor point when the storm actually hits. Without self-awareness, all these incredibly powerful theories just fail to become executable realities. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds the SPA architecture, going from treat to execution. This is where we transition from psychological theory into gritty, everyday execution. How do we actually operationalize self-awareness? Well, it starts with S, see yourself clearly. This is the diagnostic phase. And pay attention to the word ruthless here. This requires a ruthless emotional audit where you map out your fixed mindset triggers, like the exact precise moments you secretly tell yourself, I can't. You've got to use journaling here, but definitely not as a Dear Diary to just vent your feelings. You must use journaling as cognitive archaeology. You're literally digging through your own mind to find the 3 dominant limiting beliefs operating just below your conscious awareness. Let me ask you this question right now. What am I pretending not to know about myself? Yeah, it's uncomfortable, isn't it? If your instinct right now is to run away from that question, don't worry. That jarring feeling means genuine introspection is actually working. That is the diagnostic phase doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Next up is P, pattern recognition. This is the intelligence phase. Here, past learning is basically weaponized through weekly after-action reviews. You need to map out your recurring thought patterns. And I really have to warn you about something crucial here. The law of compounding works in reverse too. Small, unexamined emotional blind spots don't just stay small, they compound over time. They create massive trajectory divergences, turning into these hard ceilings on your actual potential. Now, what's really interesting here is the profound difference between what most people do and what extraordinary leaders do.
Most people use affirmations, right? Just vague, wishful, positive thinking like, I am a great leader. But extraordinary leaders use belief architecture. They don't just wish for it. They design precise, evidence-based, cognitive substitutions anchored in their actual past wins. It is highly structural, not just motivational fluff. Which brings us to A, architect new programming. This is the rewiring phase. And it's absolutely fascinating that neuroplasticity can move from just a cool scientific principle to a daily practice. You are designing specific replacement thoughts that have total structural integrity because they're based on a principle-centered foundation, much like Stephen Covey's work. You are consciously, deliberately rewiring the circuitry of your own mind. R is where the rubber finally meets the road. Ritualize daily execution. This is the discipline phase. This activates the law of momentum. We are converting your future strategy into present, immediate action. And listen, this phase isn't about waiting around for fleeting inspiration. It's about building irreversible forward velocity. You're locking your brand new programming into a physical routine. So here is the exact 3-step daily routine required to make this work. Step 1, a 10-minute morning calibration to connect to your purpose and set your emotional tone for the day. Step 2, a 90-minute deliberate practice block, and this is non-negotiable. 90 hyper-focused minutes dedicated strictly to your single highest leverage skill gap. And step 3, a 10-minute evening reflection loop. You just ask, what worked, what didn't, what are we adjusting for tomorrow? It is incredibly simple, but it is mercilessly consistent. Finally, K, keep expanding the edge. The resilience phase. Look, peak performance is not a destination you just arrive at. It's a highly dynamic state you must actively maintain. This means taking one calculated micro-risk every single day, pushing just a little beyond your comfort zone. It also means applying practical stoicism. Every single morning, you pre-decide exactly how you're going to respond to the adversity that will inevitably hit you that day. And when those inevitable setbacks do happen, you immediately activate the reframe protocol. Ask yourself, what did I learn? How do I apply it? What possibility has just opened up? Now, to do this effectively, your underlying purpose has to be deep. A shallow purpose breaks under real pressure, but a deep purpose, one connected to service or a larger legacy, actually becomes your fuel when things go entirely wrong. Section 4, the integration loop, a living system. So we've gone through the framework, but how does it actually live and breathe in your mind? Well, it's through this 3-temporal integration. Self-awareness basically allows you to connect to the past, present, and future seamlessly. You extract pure data from your past without any of the emotional baggage. You exist right in the present, where action and result are happening simultaneously, and you use both of those to formulate an airtight strategy for the future. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate state we're aiming for, compounding consciousness. This is the absolute peak of the psychotech model. In this state, every single experience becomes usable data. Every setback becomes a strategic advantage. Your awareness and your capability literally compound on each other continuously. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the honest prescription, what must actually be done. All right, I need to be completely direct with you here. Everything we just talked about sounds fantastic, but it is incredibly difficult to execute. You have to actively accept these 5 commitments. Number 1, daily inner work. This is an unglamorous, everyday practice. There is zero overnight success here. Number 2, radical intellectual honesty. You've got to stop defending your current identity. Number 3, you simply cannot do this solo. You need an external coach or a strategic mirror, because by definition, you can't see your own blind spots. Number 4, patience with the compounding curve. Those 1% improvements are completely invisible for a long time before they become undeniable. Most people quit in the invisible phase. Don't be most people. And 5, a deep, sustaining purpose. So the crucial point is this. Everything we've mapped out today is fundamentally designed for one specific thing: surviving extreme pressure without collapsing. Just like a real spinal cord, this biological architecture's entire purpose is to hold the organism upright under a really heavy load. And that is the ultimate payoff of doing the work. Without this inner architecture, pressure destroys you. But with this structured inner architecture firmly in place, pressure does not break you. It actually fortifies your foundation. The pressure itself becomes the very force that drives your growth deeper.
I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with this powerful final thought from our source material. The fire begins the moment you stop describing the journey and start walking it, one honest, deliberate, purposeful step at a time. So I'll just leave you with this question. Are you ready to stop describing your potential and start architecting it?